That's actually a perfect segue to Dr. Romero, because we're talking about parents, right? And the one group of people we know get held accountable in our public school system are our kids. Maybe nobody else, but definitely the kids, because they live with the outcomes of their public education. And no one lives with the outcomes of the public education besides the kids more than their parents. Dr. Romero, she was the author of the parent trigger law in California, which has now led to the turnaround of 2 schools, right? Mm-hmm. Can you give us a little insight into what happened when you tried to give parents power to decide whether or not their schools were going to be managed by the same organization or a new one?
Thank you so much, Caprice. Let me just say that this is personal to me, and I think anything as important as education has to be. My mother had a 6th grade level of education. I have a PhD, and I went on to be elected to the state Senate and chaired the Senate Education Committee. My high school counselor told me college was not in my future. That was some years ago, right? Today, it's not that much different. I can't tell you the number of young people that would tell me, you know what, I just heard that last week from my high school counselor. And it wouldn't be a problem so much if we didn't base our entire education system on 5 digits of separation. It's called zip code. It's a feudalistic notion. We are tied to a piece of geography so that if a parent with a child walks into a district, it's almost like a gang member asking, where you're from. And depending upon which geographic patch, which 5 digits are stamped, which side of the tracks they happen to be born on, and I lived on the other side of the tracks, you go a particular way. It still wouldn't even be so bad if those schools were turned around. But as a senator in Sacramento, I would see what we call the watch list. And I was horrified to see thousands of schools representing hundreds of thousands of kids, mostly poor, black, and brown in California, representing millions of children in California. And the thing was, their parents and they didn't even know that they were on these watch lists. I saw the list last year. I will tell you there are schools on that list that have been on the list since the first time I was elected to the legislature in 1998, and they're still on the list. So I finally got sick and tired, and I wrote a law, and the Wall Street Journal hailed it as the most revolutionary law because it didn't nip around the edges. It changed the rules of the game. And I was not even interested in parent involvement. I wanted parent rights. Parents should be the educational architects of our own children's futures. We should trust our parents. And so I wrote a little law, and I remember sitting there negotiating and going back and forth. I had no idea that one day, as they say, this little law would go across the nation, and Texas has a version of it. I understand you may be looking to strengthen that as well. And I look at this, and I think all that little law said was basically, and it's an idea that is revolutionary because it's as old as the founding of this nation. It's based on a democratic principle, democratic with a small d. And that is to say, we the people, we the parents, when our own elected officials, our superintendents, our elected school board members, do not, with the information they have before them, transform under existing federal laws provided to every education agency in America, when they, our elected officials, fail to act on behalf of our children, then we, the people, with the power of our signature on a petition, with our own John Hancocks, petitioning our government, will say, basically, get the hell out of the way because we will. These are our children. These are our children. And that's the parent trigger law. And I am proud of that little law. It's an imperfect law, but you show me other laws that are perfect. To me, it is about, being big. Go big. Texas is big sky country. Go big. California is a country unto itself. And we just said, when I was there, I said, this is a shot in time, bipartisan in approach. We moved it. People thought I was crazy. I offended, quite a few special interests in California that had moneyed and political interests in keeping the game the way that it was. But I figure, why should we fear our parents? And this is not about those kids and those parents. This is about us. It's about the future. It's about rights. It's about democracy. And it's about time that we really enact comprehensive reform that rewrites the rules of the game and gives parents the power when our own elected representatives fail, when they've had the chance to act, then basically we will. That's it. There were a lot of other things that I got through that Senate as well, but I think that's one of the most exciting.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, I can't remember how old the Recovery School District law is in Louisiana, so Patrick, you're going to have to remind us. But Patrick Dobard is the superintendent of something called the Recovery School District in Louisiana, which has the distinction of having doubled the completion rates of their schools in the last 5 years. Doubled their completion rates. And they've done it by taking strong, bold action to make deep change. So Patrick, I wanted to just ask you, how's this thing work?
Well, it's a great question. I'll do my best to answer. First, just thank you for having me here today. I'm just still humbled and kind of in awe of some of the things we've been doing in Louisiana. And just for, if I may, just quick context, because much like Senator Romero shared, this is personal for me and personal for a lot of us in Louisiana. I'm the youngest out of 7 children. My father finished high school and went immediately just to work to take care of us, and my mother didn't get to finish high school as her parents died when she was young. But one thing they ensured and installed in me and my siblings was that education is the single most important thing that we could achieve, and I'm very proud to say that all 7 of us have college degrees. And that is something that I'm extremely proud of, and it has driven me. It's something that education was just expected. You were expected to excel. And so when you got your diplomas, throughout the process, it was just like, okay, that's what you're supposed to do. Good job, keep going. So with that, the Recovery School District in New Orleans was created by the legislature in 2003. And it was initially envisioned just to turn around the lowest performing schools in the state. So a school would have to be academically unacceptable for 4 more consecutive years. For 2 years, it was basically on the books, and there actually were 1 or 2 schools in it prior to 2005. But in August 2005, we had a catastrophic event, Hurricane Katrina, that I say literally and figuratively washed away a lot of what ailed education in Louisiana, particularly in New Orleans. In New Orleans, the state went on an aggressive move to take over all of the low-performing schools in New Orleans. You're talking about a parish at that time that was both philosophically and morally bankrupt and corrupt. Where you had indicted board members for just malfeasance in many different ways. Fast forward to today, what we've seen in the Recovery School District has just been remarkable, the type of growth that we've had. As Caprice has mentioned, from 2007 to 2012, we had 23% of our students scoring at basic and above. In that 5-year period, we're up over 50% for the first time. And with that, actually, when you dig down into it, we're almost 100% African-American, 100% free and reduced lunch students in the Recovery School District schools in Louisiana. Those students, that same subset of students, they've closed the achievement gap statewide. In that same period, the state has only grown 8 percentage points, while again, we've grown over 28 percentage points in that same period. And what the Recovery School District does in order to get this growth, one of our strategies, what we're coining now the RSD way. One of the main things we've done is just been very crystal clear about what we do in the Recovery School District. So we have 80 schools statewide, 22 are what we call direct run schools that are just directly under my control, and we have 58 charter schools. We use a charter school strategy. What we do is when a school has been failing for 4 more years, keep that in mind. If it's a high school student, think about it. It's your high school career. Your district or whatever has failed you. There was one school in Baton Rouge that had been failing for a decade before the state took it over. A decade. And with that, we've devised a strategy, and it's not perfect, but it's very clear and succinct. And I think much like Parent Trigger, It doesn't dance around the edges, and this is quite simply it. 4 more consecutive years, you're automatically under state control. You lose the privilege of educating children. Privilege is funding, it's buildings, it's everything. It all comes under state control. We take and stabilize those schools for about 1 or 2 years, while at the same time we recruit high-quality charter operators, and we empower them. We empower the charter operators. We vet them through a process with an independent evaluator. The state will sign off. We will assign schools, sometimes with community. Sometimes we've done it to community, to be quite honest, and those aren't always the smoothest of transitions. But over the years, we've kind of improved ourselves on how to do this. And so where we're at now is that if schools don't meet the minimum bar, so we have an accountability system that's about to change, so think of it as from 0 to 200. And within that accountability system, we set in our infinite wisdom in Louisiana the bar at 75. So keep that in mind, right? We're not even like 100, like we'll be half, but just 75. And that was up from 45 5 years ago. And when Superintendent Paul Patricia came in, I worked very closely with him to move it up to 75 from 60. And you would have thought that we were asking just so much. It was almost like, the world was going to end, that we went up 15 points in 2 years. But if you don't meet that minimum bar in your 5-year contract, at the 3-year extension point or the 5-year renewal point, we have the authority to null and void it and then put the charter basically out of business if they have not transformed the school. Now with that, just this past December, there were 5 schools that were up for renewal and extension. 4 of them did not meet the bar, and I did not renew or extend them. 1 school was 2 points away. Another school was about 23 points away, but they had an ideal board set up. I mean, it was a young, affluent, African-American board that was really into the school. They really tried hard over this 4-year period. Students, shirts tucked in, walking down the halls nicely. Everything looked good in the school, but it was our lowest performing school in the city. And so while culturally and some families are happy, it was just unacceptable. So we made that decision to not renew that school, knowing that there would be pushback. And the reason that I give that example, because whether you're 20-something points away, or in the case of another school that was just 1 or 2 points away and we didn't renew either, the key is have very clear accountability standards. Hold to those standards, and if you have the will, which we do, I personally and professionally have it, that no excuses will be made, and you will hold individuals to these standards, you're going to see the type of success that we've had. With that, though, think about it. We only have 51% of our kids that are scoring at a proficient level now. That still means about 49% of our kids are not there, and that also means it's on what I would consider an accountability bar that's just really low. So even though we're saying we're preparing students to be college and career ready, when we do go to Common Core, as a number of other states are, I think we will be exposed in the fact that we haven't asked enough of our students and our professionals for that same matter. And so we have to continue to raise the standards. We have to continue to put rigorous achievement levels in. But the key thing is, if you are serious about reforming schools, you have to have like this undeniable will to stand strong and be very clear about what the accountability rules are and how you go forward within that landscape. Now, I'll just briefly, if I may, talk about that's New Orleans. And some people say, oh, well, you had Katrina. That's very true. But we also have about 12 schools outside of New Orleans. Particularly, we have 9 schools in East Baton Rouge. There is no Katrina. We are working right now with the local school board. I've created an achievement zone in the northern part of Baton Rouge where more than 60 to 70% of the failing schools in Baton Rouge is in the 3 zip code area. Highest crime rate, highest every low indicator rate that you would find. And so what we've done is created an achievement zone and told the school district, for those schools, I have 7 of them that's directly under my control. I said, for those 7 schools, what's my strategy? Very clear. I'm running them for the next 1 or 2 years. I'm recruiting high-quality operators. I will charter them out. What I've told the local school board is, you can have the opportunity to charter the schools out, but you cannot direct run them. You lost that privilege. And right now, so they think we're negotiating, but I'm not negotiating, quite honestly. What it actually is, unless they agree to those rules that they're going to bring in a high-quality operator, then we know what we're going to do. Last thing, you may be sitting here, well, what if charters fail? Or, charters, is that the secret? Well, no. What we believe is that those closest to children should empower, or really the ones that should be empowered to make those decisions. That's why we've embraced the chartering strategy. And what I tell my critics and our critics, that when we see us close a school and they say, see, those charters don't work, I say, why don't you say that when a principal doesn't succeed? Think about it. When we don't have good principals, what have we done for decades? We just get another principal. We try to bring in one that's better. So why is it bad when we say, hey, we will bring in a better or another charter operator, someone who's closest to the kids to continue on with the reforms that we feel are strong for us? And so we've been at this for a while. I've been at it for different levels, behind the scenes, doing a lot of the political workings. I helped to work to get the cap lifted on charters in Louisiana, which was quite easily done through a friendly amendment in the hustle and bustle of session. But at the same time, we actually worked to get letter grades in, as well as a version of the parent trigger, where now parents, if they're in a C, D, or F school in Louisiana, if they get the 50 plus 1%, they can petition to come under RSD.
Wait, did you say C, D, or F?
Yes,
so they don't even have
C,
to
not
actually
even
be
D or F.
failing.
No.
They just have to.
C, D, or F. And we're actually working
Wait,
now.
Senator Patrick, your legislation's not going to be strong enough, I think.
I just had
You said to be provocative, right?